Hey everybody, Steve Billman here. Thanks for joining me. Hey, today I'm starting a new series of videos that I'm calling Harmony for Songwriters. And we're basically going to start very simple and talk about how to construct a harmony system in a major key. And then we're going to go to minor keys and we're going to do that. And then eventually we'll get pretty complex into talking about chord substitutions and even modal interchange and different ways that you can enhance a progression for a song. A progression for a song is very important. Maybe not quite as important as the melody, but it certainly is an important element to a good song. And I'm going to give you some tips on how to write good progressions and how to change them up as well with reharmonization and such. Okay, so there's a couple things I want to mention before we get started. The first thing is, if you've never had any experience with music theory, you'll still be able to watch these videos, but I would encourage you, especially for the basics of music theory, to to search that out, to find a video, or maybe there's a bunch of books out there you can get that will help you with the basics of music theory, like what is a clef, what is a key signature, what's the circle of fifths, what's an interval. Those sorts of things are going to come in handy as we go through this course and we talk about it. So eventually I'll put some videos up of basic music theory information, but as of right now I don't have that. So that would be something you want to seek out. The other thing is, if you don't play an instrument, I would really encourage you to pick up piano or guitar. And I would even favor piano a little bit, just because everything that you'll need is right there in front of you on the piano. You can see it very easily. When you build chords, you can see that easily. And also all the instruments of the orchestra, actually, their register exists on the piano, and you can really see it. It's a very visual, easy instrument to see visually. Guitar is fine too. I'm going to be doing these videos on guitar, but the piano is something that's kind of special that I think every songwriter should have at least a little bit of facility with. Okay, so before we dive into the scale and stuff, basically there are two chord types that we're going to deal with in this series of videos. That's going to be what we call triads. Okay, and triads are a three note chord. And that's going to be the first thing that we're going to deal with, and that's the thing we're going to deal with in this video. And then there are going to be seventh chords, and we're also going to deal with those, but we're going to do that later on, okay? And those are four note chords. And the triads usually consist of the root, the third, and the fifth of the chord, and then the seventh chord, the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh of each chord. So three note chords versus four note chords. One's not better, one's not worse, they're just different, okay? But for this first video, we're just going to deal with the three note chords, the root and the third and the fifth. All right. So usually when you start something new, harmonically, people tend to choose the key of C major because there's no sharps, there's no flats, it's neutral key. And that's fine, it works. But for me, because I'm playing guitar, I'm going to choose the key of G because those chords fit for me a little bit better on the guitar. So the first thing we need to do then is figure out the scale for the G major, for G major. And then from that, I'll show you how we're going to construct these triads, these chord system. All right. So one thing before I play the major scale, just to kind of also, say, is that the musical alphabet is a little bit different than the English language alphabet, in that when we look at the English language alphabet, we go from A to Z. That's the full alphabet. With the musical alphabet, it's A to G. And within those notes, there are sharps and flats as well. But basically, it's just A to G. And then once you get to G, then you start in the next octave. You start over on A, and that goes A to G, next octave, A to G. And it just keeps cycling that way. Okay? And an octave is eight notes. It can either be an octave higher, 8 notes higher, or it can be an octave lower, 8 notes lower. But so when I say octave, that means it's going to a higher or lower range, depending on which direction we go. All right? So we're going to start with first the G major scale. And again, in the theory part of it, I'll get more into the construction, the intervals that we're using to construct the scale and all that. For this, I don't want to do that because, again, I want to keep it more on harmony as opposed to music theory, okay? All right, or at least the basics of music theory. Okay, so let's look at the scale. So I'm starting on my low G, and then that obviously is the last letter of the alphabet, so my next letter will be A. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, and G. So that high G is the octave of the lower G. It's a higher pitch. That's what I mean when I say octave. So again, the scale being G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. All right, that's my G major scale. So each one of those scale notes is going to have a certain chord built off of it. So G will have a chord, A will have one, B, C will have one, D, E, F sharp. We get back to G, it's going to be the same as the first chord. All right. Now there are going to be basically three kind of chord qualities that we'll have in the major scale when we harmonize it. We'll have a major chord, major triad. We'll have minor triad, and we'll have a diminished triad, what's called a diminished triad. And I'll break it down as I go through the scale. I'll show you which ones are which. All right, and I'll describe to you what's the difference between a major, minor, and diminished triad. We're going to have three major chords within the context of the major scale. We're going to have three minor chords, and we'll have one diminished chord after we're done harmonizing this particular scale. Okay, and the system of chords is transferable to every key, which is nice. So once you memorize it, then going from G to D, you just have to change the roots of the chords. But the quality of the chords, the major, the minor, the diminished, stays exactly the same. Okay, so we are going to build chords in what we call stacking thirds. We're going to stack the notes in thirds, and that's going to give us our system of major, minor, and diminished chords. So if I start on G, all stacking thirds means is I go three scale steps up. So G is my first root of my first chord, G, A, B. That B then becomes the third of my first chord, G. And then I go up, B, three more notes, B, C, D. The D becomes the fifth of my first chord, okay? So G is the root, B is the third, and D is the fifth. Okay, now, how do we figure out whether it's a major or minor chord? Well, the distinguishing factor is the third. It either has a major third, which would represent the major chord, or it has a minor third, which would represent a minor chord. So here's how we discover whether it's major or minor. The first note, G, a major third is going to be two whole steps away, okay, from the root of the chord. So what is a whole step? Well, if we look at a guitar, a whole step would represent two frets above. So if I'm on G, there's a fret, there's a fret. That's two frets would equal one whole step. So from G to A is a whole step. And the same thing now to B. G to B is a whole step. So two whole steps equal a major third, all right? And this note is B, and this note is B. So it represents two whole steps, G to A to B. So this is a major third, okay? And then on top of it, a perfect fifth, what we call a perfect fifth. So when you have a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth, no matter what the note is that it's starting on, that is going to be identified as a major chord. So because of the root is G, we call this G major, okay? The root, the major third, the perfect fifth. That's the first chord of the G major scale. And again, we're just dealing with triads here, okay? All right, so now I go to the second scale step, and now I'm going to do the same thing. I go up three notes. They have to be diatonic to the scale. So I go up three notes, 1, 2, 3. I land on a C, and then from the C I go up three notes, 1, 2, 3. I land on an E. So I have an A, I have a C, and I have an E. So that represents the root of the chord, which is A, the third of the chord, which is C, and then the fifth of the chord, which is E. Now, if I look at this third, I have to figure out if it's major or minor. If I start on my A note, if I go up 2 whole steps, so from A to B is a whole step. Remember, a whole step is 2 half steps or 2 frets. And then if I go up another whole step, I land on C sharp. But C sharp doesn't exist in the key of G. It's C natural. So a whole step and a half step would bring me to C natural. When you have a whole step and a half step from the root of the chord, that equals a minor third. So a whole step, a major third are 2 whole steps. A minor third is a whole step and a half step. Okay? So A, C, E, that gives me a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth. When you have a root, minor third, perfect fifth, you have an A minor chord or a minor chord. Okay? So with the G chord, the way you write the chord symbol, and I'll put it up here, is an uppercase G with no MA or no MAJ. It's just an uppercase letter G. With a minor chord, you would put A, uppercase letter A, and then MI would indicate that it's a minor chord. If you just put A, then they're going to play a major chord, and that's not going to be the right chord. So you have to include the MI there. And you'll see it on the sheet, or you're seeing it on the sheet. My third scale step then is B. If I go up 3 scale notes, I land on D, 3 scale notes from there, F sharp. So B, D, and F sharp. Now with this, there's no C sharp, so I'm going to say it's a half step and a whole step. But it's the same equation as a whole step and half step. It's just the half step is first, right? So that means it's not 2 whole steps. That means that it's a half step and a whole step. That means it's a minor third. So B to D is a minor third. F sharp on top is a perfect fifth. So that gives me a B minor chord. Remember, when you have a minor third and a perfect fifth, it's always a minor chord. When you have a major third and a perfect fifth, it's always a major triad. All right, my next scale note is C. So I go 3 scale steps up, C, D, and E. That gives me my third, and then E, F sharp, G gives me my fifth. So I have a C, E, G. So again, if I try to figure out the third, whole step from C to D, and then another whole step from D to E. There's 4 frets there, right, in between. So C to D, D to E. So that means that it's a major third. Whenever I have a root, a major third, and a perfect fifth, it is a major chord. So just like the G, you just write an uppercase letter C. You don't put MA or MAJ. All right, 5th chord, D. So I I go up 3 scale steps. I end up on F sharp, D, F sharp, and then 3 more. I end up on A, so I have a D, F sharp, and A. Remember, when I get to the end of the G, the next note up is going to be A, and that cycle of the letters repeats. So D, F sharp, A. I have to figure out the distance between the D and the F sharp. So from D to E is a whole step. E to F sharp is a whole step. When I have 2 whole steps away from the root, it's a major third. Major third, perfect fifth gives me a major triad. Okay? So G major, A minor, B minor, C major, D major. So there are my 3 major chords in this. Remember I said there are 3 major chords, 3 minor chords, and 1 diminished chord. G major, C major, and D major are my 3 major chords. All right, the next scale step is E. So again, I go up 3 steps, diatonic steps. So E goes to G, and then from G to B. So the root is E, the third is G, and the fifth is B. If I look at the distance between the root and the third, it's a whole step and a half step. It's a minor third. So E, G, B. When I have a root, a minor third, and a perfect fifth, I have a minor chord. Okay, so G, A minor, B minor, major, D major, E minor, and the last chord, this is the diminished one, this is the strange chord. So if I start on F sharp, I go up 3 scale notes, and I get to A, and then 3 above that, I get to C. So when I put those together, F sharp, A, and C, you can see from the F sharp to the A, right, is a half step and a whole step, so that makes it a minor third. From F sharp to A is a minor third. And then the diminished fifth is, again, a theory thing that I don't want to get into because it's pretty heavy and it's going to take a while to dive into it. But just understand that when you take a perfect fifth and you lower it a half step, it becomes diminished. And so this seventh chord has this minor third diminished fifth in it, and it's a very dark sounding, kind of scary sounding chord, sounding triad, okay? So G major, G, B, and D, A minor, A, C, E, B minor, B, D, F sharp, C major, C, E, G, D major, D, F sharp, A, E minor, E, G, B, and then F sharp diminished, F sharp, A, and C. And then when we go back to G, it's the same as the first chord, okay? So there are your 7 triads for the key of G major. Now, if I play them on guitar in more guitar chord fashion, G, A minor, B minor, C major, D major, E minor, and then this would be like F sharp diminished with a different inversion on it. The F sharp that I played before would be here. Okay, so those are the chords now that we're going to use to construct our progression for our new song. And what we'll get into in the next video is, now that we know the theory behind it, now how do we take this and we actually make music out of it? How do we write a progression that's going to sound good using these particular chords that we came up with? Okay? All right. So I hope that makes sense. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope it helped. And I will see you guys on the next one. Again, it's going to get to the place where we're going to start being creative with this. So it's going to get fun. But I would practice your harmony in the key of G major. Practice the chords on the piano or on your guitar. And make sure that you sort of have them under your finger so that as we're, coming up with these progressions, you're able to play them. Okay? All right, thanks again, you guys, for checking it out, and I'll see you on the next video. Take care.